guys, my name is Jessica DeAngelis, and today we're going to be talking about the topics with economy and economics. So our economics that we're going to be talking about is the current state of our economy in the United States of America. The first thing we'll talk about is the current unemployment rate and the circumstances that have led to this rate, whether it is historically high or low. Then we'll continue on to the current rate of economic growth, which is the GDP. And is it experiencing expansion, recession, or recovery with the economy? Also, is it healthy with the rate of growth we're having? Then we'll talk about what the current rate of inflation is in the economy and whether it is too high or low. And if anything the federal people should do about the inflation. Lastly, we'll talk about the current account for the United States. Is it experiencing deficit, surplus, or balanced current account? Is this good, bad, or neither? So starting with our first topic, the current unemployment rate of the economy as of this year, since January, is around 4%. It is considered historically low compared to other historical averages. And the recent trend is the unemployment rate has been steadily declining in recent years, reaching a near pre-pandemic levels. The economy has attributed to a strong growth with the jobs, with a strong economy after the recovery from our pandemic that was last known as COVID-19. This led to a number of job openings compared to the available workforce. So factors that are contributing to the low rate is a strong economic growth and government stimulus, which means federal policies like pandemic unemployment benefits and economic stimulus packages that have occurred from the strong economic growth help support employment during pandemic recovery, and with the strong economic growth also created a demand for labor. The other thing is labor market tightness. With a high number of job openings and relatively few unemployed individuals, employers are actively seeking employees or workers, which is also another reason why our unemployment rate is around 4% right now. Next, we're going to go over the current economic growth rate. Recent data has shown that the current growth rate is around 2.8%, which indicates the economy is currently experiencing an expansion phase with a relatively healthy growth rate, which is not exceptionally high, but it does have a positive growth without major signs of recession. Key points to this would be our growth rate in the economy is 2.8% annually. Expansion phase is overall production of goods and services is increasing. The healthy rate is a relatively healthy for a developed economy. It represents a sustainable pace of growth process without extensive inflation concerns, which shows that we have stability, avoidance to economic instability, and it allows gradual improvement in living standards without putting excessive strain on our resources. Next, we will be talking about the current rate of inflation in the economy. For recent data, current inflation rate is around 3%. It is slightly higher than the Federal Reserve's target, which was 2%, meaning it is considered quote unquote too high and it might need to take action to bring down potentially raising interest rates. Explanation would be the Fed's target was 2%, and we're 1% higher than that, which means they might start taking action to try to bring it down. Current situation, with the inflation being 3%, slightly above the target, it is need for potential adjustments to monetary policy, which could be a good thing to have it adjusted. With potential things to combat inflation above the target, the Feds could raise interest rates and tends to cool down economic activity and slow price increases. That is a good thing with our current inflation rate. for the amount we are getting paid and everything today in the economy. Impact on high inflation can erode purchasing power, harder for people to afford goods and services. We need to balance controlling inflation with maintaining economic growth so that we can assess the situation before making policy changes is a big thing. And then factors like supply chain distributions, labor market tightness, and consumer demand can all influence inflation levels. So we need to make sure that all of these things with inflation are not making it hard for people to be able to purchase needs and necessities like food and water and other things for their households and for their families. So keeping an eye on the inflation percentage and trying to cool it down would be a good initiation potentially. But right now it is currently around 3% of this year. And then what is the current account for the US right now? Currently has an account deficit, and that just means we're importing more goods and services than we are exporting. And that can be considered bad because that indicates the country is relying on foreign borrowing to fund spending. However, a small deficit can be considered manageable depending on economic context and is not always negative. Current account reflects a balance of trade in goods and services and as well net income from foreign investments. Deficit versus surplus. Account deficit means a country is spending more money in imports than earning in exports, while a surplus means that we're earning more in exports than spending on imports. A large deficit indicates that a country needs to borrow money from other countries covering its spending, which can lead to vulnerability and fluctuations in global financial markets. That is why a deficit can be considered bad because of the dependence on foreign capital, potential for currency devaluation, is meaning that a large deficit can sometimes lead to weaker domestic currency, making imports more expensive as well to ourselves. A small deficit is not always bad because sometimes a deficit can reflect a strong economy attracting foreign investment that can be used to fund economic growth or investment in the future. Like a country might be running deficit to invest on research and development, expecting future economic benefits from foreign or local as well. Honestly, in conclusion to what we have learned in today's year of the country, we starting off with a good unemployment rate considering the pandemic we have went through. And yes, our economic rate is around 8.8% for growth, which is a nice rate for expansion phase and is a healthy rate of growth for our strong economy. Having our inflation be so high, though, is a concern with 3%, even though we were trying to reach the 2% mark for this year, only because of the families and the pay they are getting and what they can and can't afford for necessity, for food and all of that. And having the U.S. in an account deficit can be considered bad, but it also can be good for the future. If it is not too bad of a deficit, it is not a horrible thing for us to have. If it is a huge deficit, we do need to look back on policies and all of that to fix that negative into a positive. Thank you for listening, and I hope y'all have a good rest of your week.